Self-cultivation to become a trusted superior. In the previous discussions, we talked about training subordinates and building a team. In this talk, we will focus on your role as a superior in managing emotions and language. As a manager, you are sandwiched between the company and your subordinates. On one hand, you need to assign tasks to the team, and on the other hand, you need to accept the leadership of your superiors while also fighting for resources for the team. You need to coordinate all kinds of things, and the pressure you face every day is no less than that of your subordinates. However, no matter how bad your mood is, even if you have exceeded your tolerance limit and vented to your boss, you should never complain in front of your subordinates. If you complain to your subordinates saying, "This project is not that important, it's a waste of time, deal with it after you finish other things," they may not take it seriously. If you panic and sigh when something happens, your subordinates may already be in chaos. If you have to deliver bad news to the team, you need to make sure you control your emotions and state the facts. Of course, letting subordinates feel the pressure can sometimes inspire team cohesion. But controlling your negative emotions is just passing the minimum requirement. You also need to know how to manage the emotions of the team. When leading a team, I intentionally instill the idea in my subordinates that troubles are gone, and so is the work. It is normal to encounter troubles at work, and it can even be said that the company hires everyone to solve problems. This trick is very effective, and the whole team can maintain a positive work attitude. I used to have a boss who joked with me that being a boss is easy, just say a few words. When a subordinate achieves something, you encourage them by saying, "Well done!" When a subordinate encounters setbacks, you comfort them by saying, "It's okay, that's why the company pays you to solve it." This is, of course, a joke, but it points out the essence of emotional management in the workplace. Some small jokes are also regulators of team emotions and atmosphere. I had a former leader who liked to say to everyone when leaving work, "I earned today's salary." Of course, this is a joke because salaries are paid monthly. But when he said this, it made everyone feel a sense of achievement after a hard day's work. The more setbacks the team encounters, the more my former leader likes to use jokes to encourage everyone. He would walk up to some subordinates who looked worried and ask them why they stayed overtime. His question was also interesting. "Why haven't you earned today's salary yet?" Generally speaking, such a humorous opening would help the subordinate express their troubles. If possible, you can also design some team codes, like my former leader. It can be a simple sentence with a specific reference that only your team members can understand. What to say and what not to say. Managing emotions is only part of self-management as a superior. We talked about establishing a psychological contract, and trust is the foundation. However, building trust is not easy. You can think about whether you are trustworthy, consistent in words and deeds, fair in handling things, and willing to take responsibility in the eyes of your subordinates. These qualities cannot be claimed by yourself. Sometimes, if you are not careful in your words and deeds, you may damage the impression you have in your subordinates' minds. First of all, I suggest that you learn to communicate with your subordinates in a frank style. The so-called "no tricks are better than tricks." Frankness means consistency and predictability. For example, why do many people find it difficult to fire a poorly performing employee? Because in daily communication, they are always afraid to point out the problems with their subordinates face to face. At the end of the year, they suddenly tell their subordinates that their performance did not meet the standard, and the subordinates will definitely resent them. Or, when encountering some difficult things, you say one thing in front of your superiors and another thing in front of your subordinates, which will only make things more complicated. Of course, frankness does not mean that all information should be shared. In fact, the information power, corresponding to each level, is different, and you cannot tell your subordinates everything. Dealing with this problem is not complicated. You can directly tell your subordinates what you cannot say. For example, suppose a startup company is facing many challenges. I do not advocate that the company should pretend to be doing well when it is not. On the other hand, you do not need to directly tell your subordinates, who are not at the level to know the core financial figures of the company, such as how much money is left in the account. This will also cause unnecessary panic. I have a bottom line for myself, which is to ask myself, if you do not tell your subordinates about certain information, will they resent you if they find out later? If so, then it may not be something that should be concealed. In addition to the basic rule of frank communication, I have summarized 3 rules based on the mistakes that middle-level managers are prone to make. The first rule is to be consistent with your superiors in front of your subordinates. Divergence is a common occurrence in the workplace. Ideally, you and your superior would reach a 100% agreement, and then you would assign tasks to your subordinates with 100% confidence. However, more often than not, you may leave your boss's office without fully agreeing with their demands. Nevertheless, it is crucial to maintain alignment with your superior, or else the team will quickly fall into chaos. Even if it turns out that you were right and your superior was wrong, the cognitive confusion caused by this inconsistency is irreparable. If it turns out that you were wrong, you will be even more embarrassed. You may wonder if this means that you have to force your subordinates to do something against their will if your superior is clearly wrong. Here is a solution. If you truly believe that your superior's direction is problematic, you should still have your subordinates execute the task, but actively collect feedback from them and maintain communication with your superior throughout the process. The reason is simple. Practice is the sole criterion for testing truth. Once you and your subordinates have executed the task, your frontline experience will be very persuasive. This approach also has the benefit of setting an example for your subordinates. You can maintain a reserved attitude towards your superior's views, but you must execute the task first, and then provide prompt feedback and make adjustments. The second rule is, never blame your decision-making mistakes on your subordinates. In other words, do not shift the blame onto your subordinates. They may not say anything, but they understand everything. Admitting your own mistakes can actually earn you respect. The third rule is, positive feedback must be timely. If your subordinates make a mistake, you can certainly criticize them. If they do something right, you should praise them promptly. Whether it's a commendation email or verbal praise, it all counts. This feedback must be timely. An immediate positive feedback is much more effective than praise several days later. This way, your subordinates will feel that you are genuinely happy for their progress. Everything discussed so far pertains to the areas where you, as a superior or middle manager in the company, need to pay special attention to your words and actions when dealing with subordinates. However, there is a difficulty in managing one's words and actions, which is that many times, we have become accustomed to our own ways, and we may not even realize that some of our habits are problematic. Therefore, I have one last suggestion. Proactively ask your subordinates for feedback, and use their eyes to look in the mirror at yourself. You can do this in specific situations, such as every time you have a one-on-one conversation with a subordinate and give them feedback, or even when a subordinate leaves the company. You can sincerely invite them to provide some feedback on you. This kind of feedback can effectively help you improve your self-awareness. Of course, you don't have to completely negate yourself because of someone else's words, but you can make adjustments to your words and actions. Let me give you an example from my own experience. When I took over a back-end support department, I received an important feedback from one of my subordinates. The employees in this department generally have a low level of education, and I have a bad habit of showing off my knowledge, talking too much about theory, and being overly verbose, which is not well received by everyone. To be honest, if I hadn't asked my subordinates for this feedback, I really wouldn't have realized this problem. So I made some adjustments to myself, and the team atmosphere became much more harmonious.